So sort of two ways we pass in data from the user to our program with HTTP, and that's by using a form or by using query string parameters. So let me show you that. We'll call it user input example. So make a main, HTTP wasn't served. And we do same thing we've been doing. And so the two ways we pass in data are, so let me zoom in here. One's the query string. So the query string, I have like some URL, and you've seen this on URLs, I'm sure. You can do question mark, argument, equal value, okay? And so that's the query string, is the stuff, the question mark. Okay? So that's a convention we use on the web for passing in data to our server. You can also have pound, and then whatever. If you're familiar with older web conventions, and this still works in browsers, the sort of pound or the hash, whatever, at the end there, that means go to a section of a page. So if you had an anchor tag with the ID attribute, it would go to that anchor tag. Let me show you with an example.
We saw this already.
You know about this?
Yeah, with other trainers, yeah.
Okay. So, like I said, we use the question mark and then that, and then you'll have the hash. This part is not, if I change that, I don't refresh the page. It doesn't cause another server request. So we don't use that part as part of our server. We use the question mark part, okay? So the fragment, we don't use the fragment for our URL stuff. We use the query string. So to get the query string and go is pretty easy. I have the example in the outline. You do request.url.query.get. So rec.url.query.get, and the name is, in this case I had argument. So it's the part before the equals, and what we should get back is the part after the equals. So we can say, in other words, key argument, and the val is that. So we can write that. Let's see what that gives us. So go to user input example. I really wish my plugin didn't crash. Okay, so it's running. So the value is value. I change it up here to test 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. We get back test 1, 2, 3, 4. Everybody understand? That's what I'm getting here, because it's by the key name. So if I change the argument to something else, so let's just say dog, then I don't get any value, right? Because now the key's different. So if I want to get dog, how do I get dog? Exactly. Now I get. Oops. Okay, so we can use that as a way of receiving input from the user. Now, what the names of things are, what the values are, that's up to us. That's what we define as part of our user, as a part of our application. Okay, and so the meaning of the query string parameters is up to us. But I'm just saying it's a tool we can use for getting user input. For example, a very common convention is to use Q and then to do a search based on that. Okay, so let's see if that, you know, and then I would do my search based on the value, right? And then, so if I kill that and then run it again, and then I would say Q equal test. And I would do my search based on test. I believe that's how Google works. It used to. So I search for Golang. So in Google, they are taking in Golang as the query string parameter, and they're using that as part of the search. Okay.
You copy that code to scratch, please.
YouTube uses the
Huh?
YouTube uses the video the equals the video ID for
Well, I mean every site. In fact, Google's not even using them anymore. You notice that? They're using the hash because they're doing it all in JavaScript now. So, just to make things confusing. So that's one way. What are the downsides of using query string?
You're exposing data in the URL.
Yeah. So that's one downside. In other words, the user sees what's going on up there. I mean, they may completely ignore it like most people, but it is there.
It's %20 when it goes through.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's escape.
There's a limited size. So if I want to pass a really big value, probably don't want to do that in a query string. That size depends on different browsers, different servers. I think you're safe under 2,000 characters. But 2,000 is not a lot. So limited size. There are other downsides, but that's the basic idea. So we often, instead of that, we use a form. And so in here, we have form value. Now, it so happens the way form value works. So instead of saying this, you can say rec.formValue. The way they've implemented it is if it's doing a GET request, then it will get this out of the query string. And if it's doing a post, it'll get it out of the body of the post. So to see that, we have to create a form. So let me do that, which is really easy. Method equal post. And then we'll have an input. Just to match, I'll call a Q here. And then a submit button. And let's see if that works. And we'll just print line to the terminal the value passed in. So I'll say value. Okay, so now we have a simple page that, oh, I forgot format. That I need to set the content type. Because it doesn't start with a doc type, so it doesn't know what it is. So that was plain text. There we go. So what that did is it did a post to the server. And see how I got value test here? So this is confusing because I left it up here, so let me get rid of that. So you don't see test show up in the URL. It's been posted to the server. So we can see it in the net tab. See the method post here? And then you can see what we posted down here. Q test, and it's Q equal test is how the data, the body of the post is sent. The important thing is if I refresh, this is not, it doesn't usually resend the data. It might ask you or whatever. And so that's something to keep in mind with posts, is that you're going to have to resubmit the form to make it work properly. So we can get it with form value, that's all I'm saying. So if you want to get data from the form, if you had a form that was like this. I want to get the value Q. I do form value given Q, and I get back what the user sent in. Okay? This works for text areas. If you want to see what a checkbox looks like, for example. So let's change this to checkbox. So we just changed the form a little. Reinstall. There we go. See how it's asking me? So if I change that to a checkbox, hit submit, it comes through as on. And if I uncheck it and hit submit, it comes through as blank string. So those just come through as strings in your form values. So if you were like wanting to know if somebody checked it, you'd just say equal on. You'd be like, oh, they checked it. That's how you check it in your code. And there's radios, there's text areas, selects, all that stuff are going to come through as form values, and you use form value. Any questions about that? So pretty easy to get user input. You either use the query string, or you use a form and post. If I don't put post here, if I put get here, what happens? Anybody know?
It goes to the query string.
It goes to the query string. So let's see that. And put Q equal on up here, okay? So forms work with query strings as well if you use method equal get, and that's going to be the default. So you usually see method equal post, okay? With forms. So these are conventions, and they're conventions the browser and our server agree upon of how to pass arguments to the server. Okay? And the form value here does the decoding for you. So if you put spaces and stuff, there'll be %20 or a plus. And Go will give you the version without all the pluses and percents in it. You'll get the version as the string it was intended by the user. As far as content, the format of the string, like say you're accepting input and somebody enters Chinese characters, if you have set the page's content type to UTF-8, then you'll be in good shape because you'll get back a UTF-8 string, and that's already what Go strings are, so everything will just work. So use UTF-8 and you'll be fine. If you don't do that, then you have to do a conversion, and that's not fun. But you can do it if you have to. So the last thing about this is how do we get a file from the user? You guys have all seen file input boxes, right? So you can do that by saying input type equal file. So let's see what that looks like in the browser. Right, and then you go choose a file and you can upload it. But what we need to do is set the enc type on a form. So this is hard to remember. I'll show you I hate the W3 schools. Not a fan of their site. So you can set the enc type here, and you typically would set it to multi-part form data if you want to upload a file. So let's see that. Enc type equal. Now it's going to change the format that data is sent to the server when you post. It's a slightly different format. And we'll see that in the net tab. Now Go knows how to read that header and handle it appropriately. So instead of saying form value here, you'd say form file. And we can see that that returns different stuff. It returns of this multi-part file, a header, and possibly an error. And basically that's going to give us our file. So we can say file, header, error. And we'll just print all those so we can see all of them. So, yeah.
Kind of install the new changes.
So, we'll upload a file. what do we get in our terminal? So we got this ampersand to like around here somewhere. You can kind of see this is probably the data of our file, and these are headers associated with it. So it gave the content type is application octet stream. That's like the default content type that matches, it's just any file, binary data, blob of data. You'll see that application octet stream. If you want to force a download, that's often an approach. It forces the user to download a file instead of showing it in the browser. Give it octet stream and it might be like, oh, I'll just download that. So we have a file. If we go look at, you can guess maybe where this is going to go here. We get a reader, seeker, closer. It implements, it's essentially like a read-only file. So the file that we got from form file is just like a regular file, and that means we can use it like a regular file. So, you know, we'd say if error not equal nil, you know, do whatever with errors, and we'd say defer file.close, because I think it implements closer, doesn't it? Yeah, so we'd probably defer the close there. And then we could use it. So, you know, if I wanted to print the contents of the file, how would I do that? How do I read a file?
Scan line?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of ways to read a file. So, yeah, we could. So let's see what this does. I should see the contents of what that file has. I don't remember what that file has. I guess we'll find out. Whoops. Guess we will find it. Notice I don't have to refresh the page here because I didn't change the HTML. So there, it printed the contents of the file. I guess that's our counting the number of whales in Moby Dick example. So, everybody following that?
You copy that code.
Yeah. So that's how we read a file, and we can do whatever we want with it.
It's a multi-part file, though. Will that affect anything?
Yeah. So let me show you what that looks like. When I submitted this. The content has changed into this lovely request payload. So it adds these bunch of dashes and then some random string, and then it has headers associated with it, and then it has this thing again, and now it's going to have more data associated with it. This format gets kind of complicated. You can look up the details of how that format works, but you can just see it's a mess. But that's how it uploads files. Okay. So the other format was like Q equal on, and this format is like way more complicated. But this is the format you use to upload files. This multi-part form data format. Any questions about that?
That doesn't change the Go code, though. The Go code waits until it's at
The Go code is intelligent. It knows how to look for that header. That tells it what the format is, and it acts appropriately. So the way it interprets form value, it says, is the method get it off of query string. Is the method post, get it from the form. Is the content type of multi-part form, the encoding type multi-part form data? Oh, okay, then interpret it as multi-part form data. If it wasn't, then interpret it as a regular form data, URL encoded form data. So it's intelligent enough to do that for you. So basically, you don't have to worry about it too much. Just use form value to get things from the query string or from the form. And then use form file if you're doing file uploads. Okay? Just remember that under form, you have to put the enc type. Okay? You have to put this. Now, that's not a Go specific thing. That's true of anything that supports file uploads, because that's an HTML thing. But that's how we can implement it. That's how we can get input from the user. Okay? So that gets us one step closer to building real applications, because now we we can send things to the user, and now we can get things from the user. Okay? You know, the next step is going to be like putting them in the database or something, but we're not quite there yet. So these examples: create an HTTP application which has a page with a form that takes in the first and last name, and when you submit the form, it says hello, first, last. Okay, so that should be a pretty easy program to write. And then the second one is that we take in a form that accepts a file, so what I just wrote basically, and uploads it to /temp. So now you have your file and you want to save it to the disk. I think we know how to do that too. Okay, so let's work on those two problems.